Modding Skyrim with Vortex, Part 23, Trouble with the Display Tweaks mod.
Hello, it's Cupshottin again, and welcome back to another episode of Modifying Skyrim with Vortex. Today I'm going to look at a conflict that I am having with the community shaders and the SSE Display Tweaks mod that we installed from episode 13. Back then we learned that when we installed the Tweaks mod, our frames per second increased from 60 to 75. I mistakenly thought that that was an improvement. At the same time, I was installing the lighting and the weather mods. And also, it was around the time that I got my new 4K monitor. I discovered that when I set that up, my frames per second went from 75 to 120, but I didn't think anything about that. After installing these new mods, I noticed that while my FPS had gone up to 120, my GPU had gone up to 40 to 75%, and I became concerned that I would have a problem with installing the shaders since I expected them to use a fair amount of GPU, since my old computer would fail to compile and run the shaders. Sure enough, after I loaded the 4 shaders that we did in our last episode, I could see that although I had 120 frames per second, I also had nearly 100% usage on my GPU. But how did I know that I was actually seeing 120 frames per second? I saw no difference, and I can't keep my GPU running at close to 100%. My fans are chugging away, and that's an expensive video card. I started to ask Google some questions. Let's see what I've found. My research led me to the SSE Display Tweaks mod that we installed back in episode 13. Look in its description under Important. We can read, this plugin disables Skyrim's built-in frame rate limiter and replaces it with its own. The limit is configurable in the SSE Display Tweaks INI frame rate limit option. You may also use external tools or the limiter built into graphics drivers. In case you didn't know, Skyrim limits the frame rate of the game to 60 FPS. That's the standard HD television rate. My old PC had a so-called 1K video card, that is, the standard 1920 by 1080 system. And it had a 75 Hz refresh rate monitor. I guess that's why the Display Tweaks adjusted my FPS up to 75. When I installed the Display Tweaks mod, I simply installed it with its default settings. I didn't look at the INI file, so my frame rate was set to about 240 maximum. But only 75 were being used by my monitor. Adding the new monitor changed all of that. My new monitor is rated at 144 Hz. If you look at the desktop display settings, you can see where you set your resolution and Hertz. Right-click on the desktop and select Display Settings. Then go into Advanced Display. There is no 144 setting, and I had to set it to 120 Hz with the 4K 3480 by 2160 resolution. I ran Skyrim with the weather and lighting mods installed, and the display tweaks set to the default 240 frame rate. You can see that my FPS is 120 and my GPU is between 65 and 70%. Then I installed the 4 shader mods, and I could see that although I still had 120 frames per second, my GPU was running between 75 and 85%, as you can see here. Then, as a test, I installed 7 more shader mods. Now I had all 11 of the shaders that I wanted to use installed. When I played the game, I got a frame rate of about 100 and a fair amount of stuttering. My GPU usage was 95%. Notice that my frame rate could not get up to the 120 setting. I had to fix something. The answer is in the Display Tweaks important message, where it said, "This plugin disables Skyrim's built-in frame rate limiter and replaces it with its own." I opened up the SSE Display Tweaks INI file, which can be found here. If you don't see it, that is because this file is only generated when you deploy the SSE Display Tweaks mod in Vortex. Start Vortex and open a profile with the Tweaks mod enabled and deploy it. Then you should be able to go here and see it. You can open it in Notepad. You will see something like this. For those of you who don't know, the hashtag at the beginning of a line means that the line is a remark line, or a piece of code that will be ignored by the program unless you remove the hashtag. You can read all of this, but you will have to spend a good deal of time on Google, Reddit, Steam chats, and YouTube to begin to understand any of it. Also, my following remarks pertain to playing Skyrim in full screen on a desktop. If you are playing in a windowed version on a laptop, you may need to look at what some of these other lines in this file do. There are 2 lines that are of interest regarding the frame rate, or FPS. Scroll down until you can see these lines. Maximum refresh rate equals 240 and frame rate limit equals 240. The 240 value is the default display tweak setting. In the remarks, it says that the Steam default is 60. I set both of them to 60 and saved the file. Remember, I had to have already enabled the SSE Display Tweaks in Vortex before I could see this file. After I set both lines to 60, I disabled the SSE Display Tweaks in Vortex and re-enabled it. I did that to be sure that the INI file reloaded. Then I started a new game of Skyrim. The game started, but I quickly got a black screen with this error message. The current input timing is not supported by the monitor display. Please change your input timing to 3840 by 2160 60 Hz or any other monitor listed timing as per the monitor specifications. I could not escape or tab or Control-Alt-Delete away from this screen and had to do a hard boot of my PC. When I got back into the desktop, I went into the display settings by right-clicking on the desktop. Here I could go into the advanced display settings and set my refresh rate to 60 Hz to match the settings in the Display Tweak INI file. To be safe, I restarted my PC with the new video settings. Then I ran Vortex and selected a profile with the display tweaks. I suppose it would be best to disable and re-enable the mod and then redeploy the mods in order to be certain that all the new values were in use. Then I started up a new game of Skyrim. And here is what the game looks like with those two lines set to 60 and all 11 of my shaders enabled. I could see that my FPS had dropped from 120 to 60 and that my GPU had gone from about 95 down to about 60%. I could see that there was no stuttering and the frame drops were gone. And also, if I disabled the SSE Display Tweaks completely, I got about the same results. Now I'm not sure if I need the display tweaks or not. According to its homepage at Nexus, it does some bug fixing. I can't say that I have noticed any of them. It seems like it's not hurting anything by being enabled, so for now I will leave it set up as I have it, with those two settings changed from 240 to 60 frame rate and my monitor set to 60 Hz as well. Skyrim looks nice, all the shaders are installed, the graphics card is stable, and there is no stutter. Well, I seem to have fixed my graphic card problem thanks to Google, at least for now. I think I can move on to the next project, which will be how to overwrite the Gilda-Green tree image file. Remember how the Gilda-Green tree image changed when we installed the Betagol tree mod, and how it changed back when we installed the assorted mesh fixes mod that we installed when we did the community shaders? We'll use the Managed Rules page in Vortex to bring back the Betagol version of the tree. But first, I'm sure that you want to know what those 7 extra shaders were that I installed just now. I'll show them to you in my next video.